Hi, Leanne. I decided that I was going to make a video reflection and a summary of the book Educated by Tara Westover. Um, so, I'm going to say I read this book, but I listened to it, which for me was much more beneficial. Um, so, this book is about Tara Westover, who grew up in what you would think would be a far away land in a faraway time. Um, but she's now in her 30s, and so it really wasn't that long ago. So she grew up in a Mormon, strict Mormon household whose parents didn't believe in government or anything that government what that was government related, meaning hospitals, school, and certainly not anything that the news or the government was telling them. Um, so it was interesting. Um, she was homeschooled, but she wasn't really homeschooled. She was taught how to work, and she was, I think, taught how to survive, which is what she did in that household. And so there were many instances in the book where she was in situations that were very, very dangerous. And so I know in Summerhill we have talked about what is danger, and do we let kids get hurt in order for them to learn a lesson? But we're talking like losing limbs, dangerous, riding forklifts to be raised to grab things. And that was all under her father's, not only his care, but also his recommendation. And so, as a mom, that's a little tough to hear. So, this house that she grew up with or grew up in was, women didn't have voices, but somehow her mom was allowed to be a midwife, which to her father was a woman's job. Fast forward a few years where her mother owns a business, an essential oil business that actually brings in most of the income. And her father, after an accident, is no longer able to bring in an income. And so he is fully dependent on his wife, who now runs and owns runs a successful business which is in his name. At one point in the book, Tara goes to dance lessons, and her father pulls her out because the leotards that the ballet students are wearing, in his viewpoint, are slutty and inappropriate. And so, these things that are somewhat normal to us, they're not, women are looked down upon. So, a few key points that I had written down was her upbringing showed a blatant disregard for safety, and they were often put into extremely dangerous situations at the excuse of work that had to be done, and they would learn that way. So her father eventually learned the hard way when his own stubbornness caused him to be lit on fire. Okay. So her mother's disregard for government led her to never register the birth of her children, which that has caused issues in the kids' futures, with them having to jump through a lot of hoops and get affidavits so that they could go to university eventually, the ones that wanted to go. Something that struck me was that out of all the kids, the mom, Larry Westover, She didn't know when they were born. I know that you know when your son was born, and I know that I know when my kids were born, and I couldn't ever imagine that the most important day of your life was forgotten. So that was a little bit red flag to me. I wonder how the kids felt about that. So another big part of the book was Tara was abused emotionally and physically by her older brother. At one point, he even broke her arm. She thought several times that he might kill her. And the parents excused the behavior. They made excuses for him, even as an adult man. They made excuses for him when he abused his wife and he abused his other sister. For that reason, I will never know really why, when you have two of your kids saying that their brother assaulted them over and over again, why are you taking his side? So the family eventually, they decided that they would shun her, Tara, when she, not just when she went to university. So she went through this upbringing of points in time where the neighbors were shot up or shooting at police. There was times when the brother had, really tormented girlfriends, and she witnessed that. But through everything, she just decided, you know what, I love to learn. And she decided that she was going to go to university, which was something that one of her older brothers had done, and he was allowed to do because he was a man. And so when she decided, it didn't go over very well. She studied in secret, and she eventually was able to gain entry into Brigham Young University, and then eventually Harvard and Cambridge. So it wasn't an easy start. You take a kid who has only life skills and no formal education, and you throw them into the highest formal education that there is, and there's going to be some problems. So it was interesting in one of her classes, when a situation was brought up, a former news situation where a family had been shooting at the government, and she realized that this family that this professor was talking about were her neighbors. And she realized that all these years, the story that her father had been telling her had happened. And, he was telling them, this is what the government does to you, and we should fear the government, and we will never give them our information because this is what they do. And that wasn't the case at all. And it was interesting that she went to university, and actually that story in particular came to fruition where, it was disproven. Her father's theory, his conspiracy theory, was disproven. Her father was delusional at times, and eventually she realized through her studies that he was suffering from bipolar disorder. Which is possible that her father also was suffering, or sorry, her brother was also suffering from this. So, questions to be asked. She did eventually become shunned from her family when she came forward with the accounts of abuse from her brother. And her parents, they made several attempts to get her to change her mind. There seemed to be a lot of gaslighting going on, which is not a term I use very often, but it was disturbing. Like, that's the first word that comes to mind when I think about this book. It was disturbing that this happened. So it can be argued that without the challenges that she faced in her childhood, she would have not developed the skills to succeed in her higher education. But at what cost? There's a lot of people that speak out against or for homeschooling, but this isn't a book about homeschooling. I know many families that homeschool, and not a single one of them does it the same. I know a family who homeschools according to their own homeschool program, which does not include math for the women in their families. And it's primarily music. Those girls are then married off to other homeschool families. And this is a Catholic family. This is not a Mormon family. So, we might think that this is just for Mormons, but this kind of environment exists all over the place where women are oppressed, and simply because they're women, and oppressed by the people that are supposed to love them the most. I know families who homeschool because it's best for their children, and they follow curriculums, and their kids go to university. And so I don't think homeschooling is bad. I just think that it has to be democratic. There has to be, you have to learn life skills along with, writing and math and reading. They are life skills. And so it's not just the hands-on stuff, and that's coming from a hands-on person, that there's much more to know. It has to be a full circle, a gamut of things that we learn. And so overall, I absolutely loved this book. I was on the edge of my seat. It was emotional. It was disturbing. I was shocked that it was a memoir. There was a couple of times that I actually went back to read the synopsis to see if Tara Westover was a real person, because I thought it was fictional. Because I just couldn't bear the thought that, like, someone actually grew up like this, like, in recent times. Like, this girl's younger than I am. So, she overcame a lot. And while she gained a lot of life experience from living with her family, I truly believe that there was more damage done than good, and she is currently suffering a lifelong trauma, unfortunately. So I will go on to say that this book was written in 2018, and her mother, Laurie Westover, 2 years later, self-published, what she doesn't call a rebuttal. She just wanted her say. She wanted to, in my opinion, glorify herself and all of the things that she's accomplished, and tell the world why she was right in making the choices that she did. And she does give some accounts that are in ways quite the opposite of what Tara explained. That book has an average of a 1-star review because it's poorly written, it's self-published, it's self-glorifying, and it's a book full of gaslighting. And so if anything, I think that the book Educating by Laurie Westover, it really just solidifies Tara's story. So it was interesting once I read Educated to find out that Educating existed. And the only good reviews that I could find were by Mormon news articles, which I would consider to be biased. And maybe when I was reading those reviews, maybe I was biased also. So it was really interesting. I really loved it. But it begs the question of formal education versus homeschooling. And can you do it without bias? Can you teach children the skills that they need to survive and the skills that they need to continue to learn without any type of formal education? And that's not even getting into the social aspects of things. And so it's a whole can of worms, and I really wish that everyone in the class would have read it, because we could have a really great discussion, I think. And I would actually love to have a discussion with someone from the other perspective of, a strict Mormon community. Like, I would love to have a conversation with Laurie Westover to try to gain perspective on what she thought that she was educating her children on. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I will plug my video reflection / summary into my slideshow. And if you have any questions, you know where to reach me. Thanks, Leanne.